Okay, for today's video, we are reviewing the Safari Ltd Nigersaurus. This is a figure I'm super excited to finally get and to finally review, so I'll just get into really quick how I got the figure, and then we'll go into my normal review format. I picked this figure up on eBay. This is one of the more recent Safari Ltd retired figures, being retired, and I think actually like 5 years ago now, so it's actually been retired for a bit now. I didn't realize how long ago it retired. I thought it retired more recently. And that's because it's actually been available at like a bunch of websites for a while now, but they've recently all started selling out of it, so I think this is starting to get to be a hard figure to get, but um, it's starting to really become a hard one to get, so I was very happy to finally get this figure for around the original retail price in really good condition. This was always a figure I really liked. One of my cousins had this figure, and I remember playing with it and stuff, and I always liked it. Um, like I said, I always really liked it and wanted to get this one. So with it starting to become a really hard figure to get and starting to get a little expensive, I knew now was the time to finally get it. And I kind of looked up on this one since the listing didn't say Safari, so I think some people might have missed this one. Like if you just went on eBay and looked up Safari Ltd Nigersaurus, you wouldn't have seen this one because this one was just considered Nigersaurus figure. But then I messaged the seller and they said, yeah, it was the Safari figure, so that's why I ended up getting it. Um, and it is a legit Safari one. It's got all the stuff and stuff, and it feels like a Safari figure, but the listing didn't say Safari, and that's why I think a few people might have missed out on this one, because like I said, this one is starting to become a hard figure to get. Like, you can barely find it listed on eBay. Right now, as of looking on eBay, the only one I can find is one that's like almost $60 with shipping for me, and there's one on Mercari that's in worse shape, but around $15-ish. But like websites like DeJenkins and stuff, no longer have it, and they had it in stock for a while, and I always plan on just ordering it from them, but just kind of, some stuff came up on eBay and just kind of out of sight, out of mind type situation, and then whenever I was finally going to make a Jenkins order, I realized they didn't have it in stock. Um, so I ended up looking up and, like I said, getting it on eBay. I paid around $15-ish with shipping. I think is actually a pretty good price. Um, But yeah, now we'll just get into the normal style review. So we'll just get into some animal information. So Nigersaurus is a really interesting sauropod with a shorter neck than most sauropods, while also having a much wider mouth, almost like a vacuum. That's what it's been compared to. And it contained around 500 really small teeth. And at around 9 meters, it's actually a smaller sauropod. So with the type of head and neck this sauropod has, you can tell it had a very different feeding style to something like Brachiosaurus, which would have grazed on the higher trees, but Nigersaurus probably was feeding on like the low to the ground stuff. And Nigersaurus is a Rabachisaur, meaning it is in the group of sauropods that descended from the sauropods like Diplodocus, um, and not Brachiosaurs. Um, and being a Rabachisaur, it's related to other sauropods like Amargasaurus, which isn't a Rabachisaur, but is a Dicraeosaur, another group of sauropods that descended from sauropods like Diplodocus, all being in Diplocoidea. Nigersaurus originally, though, was thought to be a Dicraeosaur just because of the sauropod body with the small neck, but now it's a Rabachisaur, but they're still related, both being in Diplocoidea. Um, and Nigersaurus was discovered in Niger, in Africa, which gave it its name, Nigersaurus. In Niger, it was discovered in the Erlahaz Formation, where it would have likely lived with dinosaurs like Oranosaurus, Suchomimus, the Abelisaur Cryptops, and also a bunch of crocodilians, including one of the largest crocodiliforms, Sarcosuchus. In Nigersaurus, I accidentally was going to read the same thing, but yeah, so that's all the animal information I have to tell you all about Nigersaurus. So now we'll get into the figure itself. Um, I think this is the best Nigersaurus out right now. Even though it's been retired for a few years and came out almost 15 years ago now at this point. I think it released around 2008, retired around 2018. So even though it's that old of a figure, I still think it's probably the best Nigersaurus out. It doesn't have much competition, though. The only one that I can even think of is the Collecte one, and I think this one's way better than the Collecte one. It just looks a lot better. But I still think even if there were like 2 or 3 ones that had came out in the last 2 years, I think that this could still easily be the best Nigersaurus. There's really not many complaints I have on this one. I really had to look up some complaints just to see. Some people have considered this one to look a little shrink wrapped, where you can like see the ribs and you can see like the almost the skull really easy on it. But you could really just say with both of those, it's just an animal that's not finding a bunch of food. And other than that, the only other complaint I've even really seen is the toe claws, the lack of a toe claw that lots of sauropods would have. Here it is on the Diplodocus figure, so these big toe claws, I believe Nigersaurus should have. I think it was present on their fossil that they found of it, and just in its group they would have them. But I really do love this figure. I love the colors. I love this greenish top and the like little sail of spikes with like this orangey yellow. It's a really simple color scheme, but it looks really, really good. And it's got like the brownish feet, which makes it look like it's been like stomping around in mud or something. I just think it looks amazing. And really, this figure doesn't have many inaccuracies. It's not a figure that I'm complaining about having any inaccuracies, really. I mean, literally the ones that I've mentioned are just little nitpicks to me that I don't really care that much about. So I really think this is just a really great figure. And after finally getting this figure, Nigersaurus is really starting to become one of my personal favorite sauropods. Because it's just something different. Apatosaurus, Diplodocus, just that's one body style. But then we've got this one interesting sauropod with a short neck and this big weird head. It's just a nice, little change up. And I'm really glad that Safari ended up making this figure. And while I did think it retired a little early, it honestly had a long production run at around 10 years. And Nigersaurus was featured in a few documentaries that I'm aware of, including a few different National Geographic documentaries like Extreme Dinosaurs. There's a few others that I'm not for sure about the names of, but it's a lot of those that feature Paul Sereno. I think he was the paleontologist that discovered it. He's a really great paleontologist, but he's almost every documentary they have Nigersaurus in, he's in, and I think he was the lead paleontologist in the discovery of Nigersaurus. And I guess now we'll get into the featured figures. So obviously, I'll show off a few more angles of this figure before I do that. But yeah, this figure just looks great. Definitely, probably the best Nigersaurus. I mean, it's this one or the Collecte one, and I personally think this is the one to get out of the two. But yeah, definitely love this figure. But now we'll actually get into the featured figures. So this is the Safari Ltd Carnegie Collection Diplodocus, which I have reviewed on the channel. I've heard that these figures actually scale to each other, so that should just show you the size. And I mean, Nigersaurus, like I said, is a 9-meter long animal, so it's not a small animal, it's just Diplodocus is huge. And if that scales up, I believe this figure would also scale with them, being the Safari Ltd Carnegie Collection Amargasaurus. Then we have a few other Safari figures that aren't in the Carnegie line, and Nigersaurus is not in the Carnegie line, but the Carnegie figures do look really good with it. I think all the figures in this video were green, so Safari Ltd Retired Suchomimus, the Safari Ltd Baby Brachiosaurus, the Safari Ltd Tube Sarcosuchus. That prehistoric crocodile's tube is such an awesome tube, but it's been retired for a little bit now, so if you can find it, you should probably get it. And then I have this is the only non-Safari figure in this video. This is the Jurassic World Minis Cryptops, which I recently got in the Series 2 blind bags. Interesting little Abelisaur that I didn't know much about. I think I called it something else, but it's in that video, but it's actually called Cryptops, and it was an early Abelisaur, so definitely really like this whole little group. But yeah, I really love this Nigersaurus. I think it's a really amazing figure that is starting to get really hard to get, but if you don't already have one and can find it anywhere for a good price, I would definitely recommend picking it up. Oh, and one other thing I did want to mention about this figure, I actually kind of did a poll for this figure. I did a poll of which review do you all want to see first out of the Safari Ltd Kentrosaurus, because I have the old one, and I was going to review it since we're getting the new one that's just a repaint. Or I said a surprise sauropod, which I got in the eBay lot, and the poll was actually very easily going for the sauropod figure, which obviously was this figure. But that Kentrosaurus review will be the very next video on the channel. So, yeah, just wanted to mention that here at the end. And once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I am out.